the permit. Well, this is Cal State Fullerton. Right now is 5:30. Wednesday, May 2nd, 2012. I'm at the parking lot. I'm going to Ron Paul rally over there. There's a lot of people getting in line right here. It's really this is where people have to buy parking ticket permits. Well, let me get in the line. 6 o'clock. There's some vendors of t-shirt on car. Just got one.
Dan, you know where Dawn is?
Huh?
Has Dawn arrived yet?
I'm not sure. Bob is here.
Okay, all right. Thank you. You just can't give me our flyers.
Does everybody have tickets?
Nice, all the way back down.
Because they don't like it.
Yeah, he's passing out flyer. And it's a long line.
Yeah. Oh, I see pictures.
6 p.m. pass. Long line.
Are you?
Yeah.
He's the man with the.
Put them away.
He really needs our help.
Treat him gently.
Well, I know.
You got your thing.
Anyone would like to make a cash donation?
About 6:20 after 6. Got people around.
You guys brought tickets. Do you guys have your tickets or your barcode on your phone? You got them? Open them up for them, please. You have your press or dog?
I have my own. Thanks.
Thank you. Those people are with us. Okay.
Make sure you folks are registered Republican.
This is the stadium. That's where we're going. Oh my gosh, that's a giant.
You see the good things, right? The orange one. Yeah, that one's good.
Now I am on top of the stadium looking down. Look at all the red, orange one. I'm on the front row. Let's see if I can get it. Stadium. Con taken, is it? Now you got into the stadium. One side of it. That's strange. Perfect weather. It's a little bit cloudy. It's about 70 degrees and it's nice. It might not rain. So that's good.
Where's the nachos?
He's alright, he's alright. This prison cell, someday I'm gonna be
A lot of snacks. Haven't seen him yet.
That was very interesting. Thank you guys all for coming out tonight. This is an amazing turnout. Before we even start anything, I just want to stress the importance of registering Republican for the upcoming primary. Because all of this will mean nothing if we aren't registered Republican, and we have to vote. So my name's Derek, and I'm seriously so excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, Derek!
I would like to begin by thanking the college Republicans, Youth for Ron Paul, the faculty and staff here at Cal State Fullerton, all my friends here. We all needed everyone's cooperation to make this possible. So tonight we have the privilege of listening to a gentleman that has dedicated his life to the service of others in both the public and private sectors. When he was called upon by his country, he served as a United States Air Force flight surgeon. As a medical physician, he delivered over 4,000 babies. And during his practice, he never accepted any payments from Medi-Cal or Medicaid. Instead, he either lowered the fees or waived them completely for those who could not afford them. He began his public service as a congressman in the late 70s and has been consistent ever since. He predicted the economic crisis and the bursting of the housing bubble. In 2007, he was the only person bringing up these issues, but nobody took his warnings seriously. He is the biggest advocate of America's youth, who not only have the highest unemployment rate, but will be inheriting a debt that's over $15 trillion and is rapidly rising. However, like John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, he also believes in the concept of the shining city on the hill, and that the best way to promote democracy and freedom around the world is by leading by example. By having our liberties, a sound currency, and a vibrant economy. It is my pleasure right now to introduce to you Texas Congressman, the champion of the Constitution.
Sounds like there's a revolutionary spirit in town tonight. Thank you very much. Some people think the election's coming to an end. The revolution is just getting going. Before I get started, I want to introduce my wife, Carol, and our granddaughter, Linda, sitting down here. Eric, thank you very much for that very nice introduction. Thank you all for coming out. What a wonderful evening. It's really a pleasure, and it gives me a lot of encouragement to see such enthusiasm, because the issues are so vital, so important. And I am so encouraged to know that so many young people especially are saying, you know, things have to change. We can't continue to do what we're doing, and this is what the revolution is all about. But it's a revolution that's a special revolution. It's a nonviolent intellectual revolution. It's not a brand new idea, because it's more or less just a continuation of those ideas that made America great, and for some reason, unfortunately, they forgot about 100 years ago, and we need to revive that spirit of liberty once again in this country. But things have definitely changed recently, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, in the last 10 years. I've been more or less talking about some of these issues for 30 years, and I noticed a big difference. But it's dramatically different in the last 5 years, because the American people have awakened and found out that we do not have a sound economic policy. And so many now realize that we don't have sound money, and we need to do something about our Federal Reserve system. Idea. Where did you ever get that idea? 5% of the American people have come to our viewpoint and said, it's time to come home. Get out of Afghanistan. Bring the troops home. So there is a definite different attitude with economic policy, the Federal Reserve, and also the foreign policy. But there's also an awakening in this country that there has been a systematic attack on our civil liberties, and we have to stand up and say no more. The purpose of government is to protect our liberty, not to destroy our liberties. For instance, very proud of the Fourth Amendment. They wanted privacy. They didn't want the king and the military coming into their homes without permission and without warrants. And yet today, we're living under a law that says that the Fourth Amendment has very little meaning, and the president and the executive branch can do just about whatever they want. This is the reason I have talked about before it was passed and since it's been passed, and I believe it should be one of the first things that we repeal once in office, and that is getting rid of the Patriot Act. Areas, the American people are waking up, whether it has this attack on our personal civil liberties, whether it's our attack on our First Amendment rights, whether it's the understanding of economics, which is coming around to making more sense, as well as the foreign policy. And this is what is dramatically different. And it's dramatically different on the campuses of this country. We're getting thousands of people coming out. And if you look for the information about what is happening, guess what? The revolution is not being described on TV. But systematically in Washington, D.C., they want to use the internet to control and understand. They just recently built the biggest thing in the history of the world, and that is a National Security Agency compound out in Utah that can hold more records than any one establishment before. Trillions and trillions of dollars of all individuals in this country. They don't need that kind of information. They're supposed to do the opposite. We're supposed to have openness in government and privacy for the people, not attacking the privacy of the people. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there were quite a few, mostly the economists that were in the Austrian economic camp were very much aware of the financial bubble and warned about it, and sure enough, it came. Well, the financial bubble comes from the ability of the Fed to monetize debt, which is an encouragement, it's a facilitator, it's a taxer, because if governments can spend endlessly for the benefit of buying votes for them, and if we get the country to come around to really understanding what personal liberty is all about, they will realize what Jefferson talked about, that we have a God-given right to our life and our liberty, and we ought to have a God-given right to keep the fruits of our labor as well. Which means the 16th Amendment needs repealed just as well. Give the incentive to the people to work and keep what they earn. Believe me, they will work harder. Today, productive energy is not released in this country. If somebody really wants to get productive, how many jobs are going overseas? There's a lot of U.S. companies right now that are adding jobs, but when you look at it, the jobs are being added overseas. So there is so much we can do here to encourage individuals to come back. The tragedy here in this country is if you're on the receiving end, if you know the inside track, you get the benefits as the bubble is being blown up, and then when the crunch comes, guess what? They get bailed out. We need to stop all the bailouts. They don't deserve the bailout. Industrial complex, the whole mess. They feel entitled and they throw the crumbs to the poor, and then when there's a crisis, the rich get bailed out and the poor get poorer, the middle class loses their jobs, and they end up losing their houses as well. So this is the reason why we have to challenge the whole notion of the entitlement system. You're entitled to your freedoms, and the government should be protecting your liberties, not pretending it can redistribute wealth and create wealth by doing it. It destroys wealth under those conditions. Very simply, in order to restore a sound economy and get jobs back here again, I think we should cut spending. But that's such a strange idea in Washington. Even our side of the aisle has a proposal to look like they're cutting spending, but they're only cutting proposed increases. In the next 10 years, the proposed increases are about $10 trillion. So if they cut them down to $9 or $8 trillion, say, oh, look, we just cut $2 trillion. I want to cut it. I want to cut $1 trillion of real money in the first year in office. Worry about it, and they say, oh, won't that cause a crash in the economy and this will really wreck things? You can't do that. But what about saving all this money on the wars? Wouldn't that be a good place to start? In the last 10 years, there was $4 trillion added to our debt by fighting these wars overseas. Now, the founders had a good way of restraining us from getting involved in war. They simply wrote in the Constitution that only Congress can declare the war, and which means the Congress is the closest to the people, so the people have a say through their congressmen whether or not we will make this precise declaration of going to war. If you look at what kind of lives that we have lost in the last 10 years since 9/11, Americans, soldiers and contractors, we've lost 8,500. That's not a fair deal. I understand 9/11 very, very well, but going into a policy where we spend a lot of money, bankrupt ourselves, and a lot of Americans get killed, that's not very good payback. We need to wise up and have a different type of foreign policy. A global war on terrorism. Terrorism is a monstrous thing to deal with, but by marching around the world believing that we have the moral authority to bomb any country, any place, because there might be a terrorist hiding behind a bush, and having secret weapons, and having drone missiles directed from individuals in the United States and going over, and guess what? We make mistakes. I mean, do we know that we kill the right people? No. We know that a lot of children and a lot of innocent people die, and we know that every time you kill one over there under those circumstances, you probably create another 100 who's saying, why are we being terrorized by bombs falling out of the sky? We haven't done anything to the Americans. Why we can cut a lot of money out of the military. We can have priorities. If we continue to do what we're doing, we're going to bring in the destruction of the currency, and even the Social Security recipients and the elderly getting medical care and the children's health care and education program, they will come crashing down, because when the money doesn't work, nothing works. So we could work our way out of it, but we can't do it by spending more money and printing more money. It won't work, and I think the American people know it, that it can't work. $1 trillion sends a message that we're going to get our house in order. We can start with overseas spending. We don't need to give away foreign aid. I'm convinced that foreign aid is taking money from poor people in this country and giving it to rich people in poor countries. It ends up to be a political football, and it doesn't help the people it's supposed to help over there. It helps the government. And besides, if we're a very wealthy country and doing well and setting an example, we as individuals can decide where to send our money and help the people truly in need. Recession, the American people have been very generous. There's still crises around the world, and the American people come. It's so much better than depending on government bureaucrats and special interests doing these kind of things. So we can make these cuts. If we do this, the other suggestion I have is going back to the 2006 budget. And the government wasn't too small in 2006. It was still rather big, so it's not like we're destroying the whole government. We're just going back to a more modest time and getting rid of a few departments, like, say, 5 of them to begin with. We Department of Energy passing out ethanol benefits to anybody. So there's a lot of things that we could do to spend a lot less money. And if we did that, we don't have to start. And I think politically, it's a mistake to start on child health care or food for poor people or the elderly health care. Now those programs theoretically shouldn't have started, and they're not working. If we continue to do this, they're all going to come crashing down. But if we want to work our way out of it, we have to say where we're going to cut, and we should get the people, right, left, center, independents, to agree that coming home and stop spending this money overseas during these wars would be the easiest place. Cut these others and try to preserve these programs and let people get weaned off. For instance, I think it would be just great if we did this and offered everybody that's coming out of college right now and having a tough time, if you wanted to assume responsibility for yourself, to stay out of the Social Security system and keep your own money and take care of yourself. About an hour or so. The bill had been around for a long time in one form or another, years, but they couldn't get the consensus to pass it. So after 9/11, the consensus was there. Oh, we have to do something. We have to do something. I said, why are you voting for this? You don't even know what's in it. He says, I know. I said, you know, there's going to be some bad stuff in this. He says, yeah, I know that. I said, why are you going to vote for it? He says, well, how am I going to go home and explain to my constituents that I voted against the Patriot Act right after 9/11?
Mind control.
I said, why don't you? I said, that is what your job is. Go vote right and go home and explain it to them what you're supposed to be doing. But instead, we have continued the process. Not only has it been the Patriot Act, we have the part of the National Defense Authorization Act, where the military now is authorized to arrest American citizens held in secret without an attorney and indefinitely. So let's put that high on the list for repeal as well. Of course, once we get in the repealing mood, we'll repeal that Obamacare as well. Repeal government care, what we have to do is get the government out of the way and allowing you to make your own decisions about your medical care. That is, get the government and the drug companies out of your way for picking alternative health care and nutritional products and vitamins. We want to advance the cause of liberty to such an extreme that we want to return to the times when we were allowed to drink raw milk if we wanted to. In the 1960s, there used to be a saying that if you weren't a liberal when you were 20, you didn't have a heart. But if you weren't a conservative by the time you were 40, you didn't have a brain. So I think our philosophy says, why can't you have a heart and a brain together? That's what freedom's all about. But in a revolution, you have to strive for what seems like the impossible and put the energy into it. You have to have passion. You have to use reason. It's emotion and it is passion, but it also has to make sense. The reason, it has to have reason behind it. Think of the individual behind the revolution, our revolution. They said for 100 years they talked and studied and understood what property rights were, and they were well versed, much more so than so many of us are today. But the revolution, the intellectual revolution that we're talking about has occurred now for several decades. It didn't just pop up 4 years ago. What's popping up now is the translation of the intellectual movement is popping up in the political atmosphere now. And but for 30 or 40 years, we've had these think tanks, these people writing, and more professors than ever teaching sound economics. So the groundwork has been laid, and that is why it's coming about now, and we're seeing this. We just don't know the timing. The one thing that we know for certain, if we sit on our hands and we do nothing, there will be the bankruptcy, and those people I was going to say something else, but I'll call them people. Those people in Washington who are in charge will not give up their power easily. So this is the reason that it's up to all of us. Every one of us has a job to do. One way or the other, everybody's job is maybe vary from one to another. Some people will be very involved in politics and campaigning and running for office and teaching and writing and working on the internet. But it is most important that we study and understand so that we can defend it intellectually and not be put down and be told that we don't care about people. Because if we I believe we all do have humanitarian instincts, if you have these instincts, there's only one way you can take care of the maximum number of people with the maximum benefits, and that's through a free society. History proves that. Pursue this with diligence. I believe the results can exceed expectations. I really never expected a whole lot in my political career. Matter of fact, I didn't even expect a political career. I just wanted to get a few things off my chest. And therefore, I wanted to just lay it out on the table, and I was sort of pessimistic and thinking, well, not many people would listen. But I did talk to a lot of people in my congressional district, and they were receptive to these ideas. Now the audiences are bigger, and the crowds are more energized. The message is being spread, and this energy that's coming from the younger generation and the incorporation of all age groups now, and with the use of the internet, all this is coming together, and the need is so great. I think the last 4 years, things have accelerated because of the need. People are sick of the world wars, and they're sick of the spending. They know these debts are horrible, and the students coming out of college, they may have a huge debt and no job, and they know there's something deeply flawed with the system and that we need to change it.
Yeah.
Right. People now, when they understand this issue, right now the vehicle has to be in the political system. And someday maybe that can be improved. But we still have enough freedom. I think the internet obviously is very, very important.
Yeah.
And being involved, it's the spreading of ideas. If I had the one thing that is the most important to carry on a revolution is the spreading of ideas. And even in the original days of the founding, they've spread ideas by writing letters and pamphleteering, and sometimes they just did it on their own. They didn't have any other vehicle. So the spreading of ideas is key, but acting out afterwards. There are some of my friends who know and understand and think spreading of ideas and intellectually is the only thing that counts, and politics don't count. But eventually, spreading of ideas is important, but eventually you have to have political action. The founders practiced political action. They knew the fundamentals of what tyranny, the bad parts of tyranny, and they wanted to change. So they were able to translate that into demanding their freedoms, and that is why we were introduced to a society that we've had. So we have been blessed, but if we don't do something, we will lose it. And I think this is what the people are understanding in this country like never before, that we're on the edge of something where it's not going to be maintained. The world financial system is worse than anything, in my estimation, in the history of the world, because it's a global economy like never before. It's based on a single fiat currency, the dollar, like never before. Debt is unbelievable, and just because we've been taught in school that debts don't matter, and if you have problems with debt, you get more, try to tell that to a student that's getting out and has debt and says, oh, that's okay, you don't have a job, but you have this debt, you have to run up some more debt, go get another credit card. We know that doesn't work, and it doesn't work for a country either. It doesn't work for the entire world either. Government by nature is wasteful and fraudulent and abusive. So you have to expect it. It is the fact that a program might be wasteful and fraudulent, but taking the money from somebody was fraudulent too. Or debasing the currency and inflating the currency, that's fraudulent too. So it is, if you concentrate and say the program is okay, but we just need better bureaucrats in there and better politicians to better manage it, it won't work. I've heard that too many times, and there's been too many bills passed. It doesn't do a thing. Even though in theory you can support it, but that isn't the issue. It's the issue of government. What should should the role of government be? And that is a question we have to ask ourselves. The founders asked that question. They came with a conclusion. The solution isn't complex. It isn't 37 things that we can do. It's only one. The purpose of government should be to protect our liberties. That's it. In a very limited way, that means the government has the responsibility to give us honest money and not counterfeit the money, and to protect property rights, to protect contract rights, not to dictate contracts and interfere with contracts like they did after the bankruptcy. They interfered and purposely broke contracts. When the Depression hit, the contracts with the government and private industry with the promise to pay in gold, the courts came along and said, oh, you don't have to. So they did exactly the opposite of what they're doing. And today they're supposed to protect our privacy, and they don't. They protect their secrecy. Yeah. So we have to know what the role of government ought to be. It is to protect our liberties, which means that under our Constitution, that means you have a strong national defense. And I think that is good. But just buying more weapons when we don't need more weapons, how many more weapons do we need? We have more than everybody else put together, and nobody's going to invade us. You know, I don't think we need these more weapons. What we need is a wiser foreign policy, and one design where it's very limited in a republic, the protection of liberty, protecting the marketplace, protecting your right to run your life as you see fit, and a foreign policy which means friendship and trade with people. Believe me, under those circumstances, I think we would have the greatest chance for peace and prosperity. That should be our goal. Thank you very much.
You just end it. And
Other than on television.
That poster out there.
yeah, you got on this track.
Hey, Tim! You had a couple of really good plays. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Roger. Roger. 1, 2, 3. You got your gun in the little side. 1, 2, 3.
Someone told me 5,000 on each side. How many 5,000? It looks like about 5,000. So it's about